To conduct the document review, utilizing the Food Safety Plan program under the SQF Module 2.4.3, first check if the document title matches the uploaded file name on the dashboard. In this instance, we do have the same titles as the Food Safety Plan program. Next, both must have the same document code. For this example, we do have 2.4.3P0. Since this is a template, we indicate the PCQI as the account initials. However, we can customize the code based on the company's initials. For the page number, we use the page X of Y format. Ensure that it reflects the current page position and the total page number of the document. Then insert the company logo here, together with the company name, the company address, and enter the designated department. For the originated by section, it can be the food safety, quality assurance, or the quality control personnel of the company. The originator ensures the implementation of the quality management and document control system. First, enter the name of the originator, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date originated. For the reviewed by section, it can be the personnel assigned in the Quality Management Department who reviews the drafted document or its revision for accuracy and implementation. Enter the name of the reviewer, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date reviewed. For the approved by section, it must be the person in the C-level management who has approval authority. First, enter the name of the approver, affix the signature, input the position title, and the date approved. The revision date is the same as the date originated or drafted by the author. For the effective date, it is the date the document was signed and approved. For the publication date, it is when the document is published for distribution and initiated personnel training. The implementation date is when the document is distributed and personnel training is completed. For the supersedes, put original for the initial issuance of the document. For any revisions, reflect the initial revision date before the current revision. Please be reminded that this section must be properly filled out to be compliant. Now we will focus on the components of the program. First is purpose. The purpose is the implementation of any certification standard or compliance with a regulatory requirement. For this program, it is for implementation with the SQF Module 2 Edition 9 for food manufacturing under Clause 2.4.3. First, to implement SQF 2.4.3.1, a food safety plan shall be prepared in accordance with the 12 steps identified in the Codex Alimentarius Commission HACCP guidelines. The food safety plan shall be effectively implemented and maintained and shall outline how the site controls and assures food safety of the products or product groups included in the scope of the SQF certification and their associated processes. More than one HACCP food safety plan may be required to cover all products included in the scope of certification. Second, to implement SQF 2.4.3.2, the food safety plan or plans shall be developed and maintained by a multidisciplinary team that includes the SQF practitioner and those site personnel with technical, production, and engineering knowledge of the relevant raw materials, packaging, processing aids, products, and associated processes. Where the relevant expertise is not available on site, advice may be obtained from other sources to assist the food safety team. Third, to implement SQF 2.4.3.3, the scope of each food safety plan shall be developed and documented, including the start and end points of the processes under consideration and all relevant inputs and outputs. Fourth, to implement SQF 2.4.3.4, product descriptions shall be developed and documented for all products included in the scope of the food safety plans. The descriptions shall reference the finished product specifications, plus any additional information relevant to product safety such as pH, water activity, composition, and/or storage conditions. Fifth, To implement SQF 2.4.3.5, the intended use of each product shall be determined and documented by the food safety team. This shall include target consumer groups, the potential for consumption by vulnerable groups of the population, requirements for further processing if applicable, and potential alternative uses of the product. Sixth, to implement SQF 2.4.3.6, the food safety team shall develop and document a flow diagram covering the scope of each food safety plan. The flow diagram shall include every step in the process, all raw materials, packaging, service inputs, scheduled process delays, and all process outputs including waste and rework. Each flow diagram shall be confirmed by the food safety team to cover all stages and hours of operation. Seventh, to implement SQF 2.4.3.7, the food safety team shall identify and document all food safety hazards that can reasonably be expected to occur at each step in the processes, including raw materials and other inputs. Eighth, to implement SQF 2.4.3.8, the food safety team shall conduct a hazard analysis for every identified hazard to determine which hazards are significant. Their elimination or reduction to an acceptable level is necessary to control food safety. The methodology for determining hazard significance shall be documented and used consistently to assess all potential hazards. Ninth, to implement SQF 2.4.3.9, the food safety team shall determine and document the control measures that must be applied to all significant hazards. More than one control measure may be required to control an identified hazard, and more than one significant hazard may be controlled by a specific control measure. 10th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.10, based on the results of the hazard analysis, the food safety team shall identify the steps in the process where controls must be applied to eliminate a significant hazard or reduce it to an acceptable level. In instances where a significant hazard has been identified at a step in the process but no control measure exists, the food safety team shall modify the process to include an appropriate control measure. 11th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.11, for each identified CCP or critical control point, the food safety team shall identify and document the limits that separate safe from unsafe product. The food safety team shall validate all of the critical limits to ensure the level of control of the identified food safety hazards and that all critical limits and control measures individually or in combination effectively provide the level of control required. 12. To implement SQF 2.4.3.12, the food safety team shall develop and document procedures to monitor CCPs to ensure they remain within the established limits. Monitoring procedures shall identify the personnel assigned to conduct monitoring, the sampling and test methods, and the test frequency. 13th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.13, the food safety team shall develop and document deviation procedures that identify the disposition of affected product when monitoring indicates a loss of control at a CCP. The procedures shall also prescribe actions to correct the process step to prevent recurrence of the safety failure. 14th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.14, the documented and approved food safety plan shall be implemented in full. The effective implementation shall be monitored by the food safety team, and a full review of the documented and implemented plans shall be conducted at least annually or when changes to the process, equipment, inputs, or other changes affecting product safety occur. 15th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.15, procedures shall be in place to verify that critical control points are effectively monitored and appropriate corrective actions are applied. Implemented food safety plans shall be verified as part of SQF system verification. 16th, to implement SQF 2.4.3.16, critical control point monitoring, corrective action, and verification records shall be maintained and appropriately used. 17th, To implement SQF 2.4.3.17, where food safety regulations in the country of production and destination prescribe a food safety control methodology other than the Codex Alimentarius Commission HACCP guidelines, the food safety team shall implement food safety plans that meet both Codex and food regulatory requirements. 18th, to implement 21 CFR 117.155 verification. A. Verification activities. Verification activities must include as appropriate to the nature of the preventive control and its role in the facility's food safety system. 1. Validation in accordance with 117.160. 2. Verification that monitoring is being conducted as required by 117.140. 3. Verification that appropriate decisions about corrective actions are being made as required by 117.140. 4. Verification of implementation and effectiveness in accordance with 117.165. And 5. Reanalysis in accordance with 117.170. B. Documentation. All verification activities conducted in accordance with this section must be documented in records. 19th, to implement 21 CFR 117.160 validation. You must validate that the preventive controls identified and implemented in accordance with 117.135 are adequate to control the hazard as appropriate to the nature of the preventive control and its role in the facility's food safety system. And B. The validation of the preventive controls. Lastly, under purpose, to implement 21 CFR 117.170 reanalysis. You must conduct a reanalysis of the food safety plan as a whole at least once every 3 years. 1. Within 90 calendar days after production of the applicable food first begins, or 2. Within a reasonable time frame, provided that the preventive controls qualified individual prepares a written justification for a time frame that exceeds 90 calendar days after production of the applicable food first begins. D. You must revise the written food safety plan if a significant change in the activities conducted at your facility creates a reasonable potential for a new hazard, or a significant increase in a previously identified hazard, or document the basis for the conclusion that no revisions are needed. E. A preventive controls qualified individual must perform the reanalysis. And F. You must conduct a reanalysis of the food safety plan when FDA determines it is necessary to respond to new hazards and developments in scientific understanding. Next to purpose is scope. The scope of the program is based on the purpose and serves as a guide in defining and describing the layout of the procedure. It includes the introduction to food safety plan, food safety team, product descriptions and intended use, process flow, hazard analysis and preventive control, the monitoring and corrective action, verification and validation, and frequency. Next to scope is policy. The policies are the rules set by the company as their implementation guide. Under policy, 1. The food safety plan is prepared using the HACCP method, which means that all products and processes included in the SQF scope of certification are addressed in one or more HACCP plans. 2. The Codex HACCP model is to be used. 3. All HACCP principles and implementation steps are included in the HACCP food safety plan. And 4. The HACCP plan is fully developed by the site, meaning the site may use the services of an SQF consultant but takes full responsibility of the HACCP plan. Fourth is procedure. The procedures is the step-by-step process and the actual implementation of the policy. Under procedure, 1. Introduction to food safety plan. A food safety plan consists of the primary documents in a preventive controls food safety system that provides a systematic approach to the identification of food safety hazards that must be controlled to prevent or minimize the likelihood of foodborne illness or injury. It contains a collection of written documents that describe activities that ensure food safety during manufacturing, processing, packing, and holding. Second is the food safety team. The food safety team leader should be appointed preventive control qualified individual to manage the food safety plan. PCQI does not need to be an employee of the facility. Food safety team should have the knowledge and expertise to develop food safety plan. The team should be multidisciplinary and should be in different departments: management, production, quality assurance, warehouse and laboratory, under maintenance, sanitation, purchasing, customer service, and compliance. Next is team composition. In selecting the team, the food safety leader should focus on those who will be involved in hazard identification, those who will be involved in the determination of critical control points, those who will monitor critical control points, those who will verify operations at critical control points, and those who will examine samples and perform verification procedures. Next to team composition is training. The team members must be trained on the Codex General Principles of Food Hygiene and the guidelines for applying the HACCP system to ensure that the team will work together with a common focus and use the same approach and terminology, which you may refer to ETRR, to training records, and to training program. Third, under procedure, is product description and intended use. The food safety team must make a complete description of each food product, including all ingredients, processing methods, or packaging materials used in the formulation of the product to assist in identifying all possible hazards associated with the product. The product description should include the name of the product, ingredients, composition, potential to support microbial growth, under that is water activity, pH and moisture content. Next is the processes or methods or production technology, shelf life, appropriate packaging, and intended use and target consumer. Next is identification of intended use. The intended use of the product refers to its normal use by end users or consumers. The food safety team must specify where the product will be sold and the target group, especially if it happens to be a sensitive portion of the population. Next to identification of intended use is process flow. The food safety team should draw a process flow diagram showing each step in operation. It was generally representing all the steps that raw materials go through to become a finished product. Step in a process flow may include receiving of raw materials, store of ingredients, preparation, cooking, cooling, packing, labeling, storage, and distribution. Sixth, under procedure is process flow format. Under that, one is linear flow diagram. A table format or other program can be used to develop a flow diagram for the products covered in this food safety plan. And second is the process narrative diagram. A text description of each step in the flow diagram can provide more food safety and or control information that can be shown easily in the flow diagram and important to understanding the process, which you may refer to process flow program. Seventh, under procedures, is hazard analysis and preventive controls. Under that, one is hazard analysis. Identification of all potential hazards associated with the product at all stages, from raw materials to consumption. This list can be used for assistance in the identification of potential hazards. 1. Biological. Hazards that can cause adverse health impact. 2. Chemical. Hazards that can cause both health and physical harm. 3. Physical. Hazards can cause choking and other health issues to the consumer. 4th, allergens. Hazards can cause an allergic reaction to an individual to certain foods. 5th, intentional contamination or intentional adulteration. A hazard that a person or group of people contaminates a food business that causes significant public health consequences, creates widespread public fear, disrupts trade, and increases food insecurity. And sixth, economic fraud. It is a type of food fraud in which a person has added a substance to food to enhance its apparent value or profitability. Next is hazard evaluation. Under that, one is risk assessment. Assess if a hazard was to occur. What would the severity of the illness or injury be? Risk assessment models are used to assist in determining which hazards are significant if no preventive controls are put in place, which you may refer to risk assessment form. And second is the decision tree. This determines the appropriate control. Decision trees comprise a sequence of questions which, when answered, determine the appropriate control, which you may refer to decision tree. Then, next to that is preventive control. Preventive controls should be established for steps through which list of hazards will be prevented, eliminated, or reduced. The preventive control chosen for controlling a particular hazard is based on a risk-based approach, and the control must be current with food manufacturing practices. Potential preventive controls used for the hazard control. 1. Process preventive control, for controlling the microbiological hazard. 2. Allergen preventive control, for the control of allergens through allergen management procedure. 3. Sanitation preventive control, for the sanitary condition adequate to significantly minimize or prevent hazards such as environmental pathogens, biological hazards due to employee handling, and food allergen hazards. Fourth, supply chain preventive control, for controlling the hazards of ingredients when the originating facility does not have controls in place for those hazards. And fifth, recall program, for the safety net that can prevent consumers from buying or eating a potentially harmful food product, which you may refer to process flow program, to cleaning and sanitation program, to raw material receiving protocol program, and to product recall program. Eighth, under procedure is monitoring procedures and corrective action. 1. Monitoring procedures. 2. The food safety plan must include written procedures for monitoring the preventive controls, including the frequency of monitoring procedures. Monitoring must occur often enough to ensure that preventive controls are consistently performed. 3. The monitoring procedures should address each of the following. 1. Who is responsible for monitoring the activity? 2. What is to be monitored? 3. How is to be monitored? And 4. When monitoring will take place and how often. And fourth is corrective actions. The food safety plan must include written corrective action procedures that must be taken if preventive controls are not correctly implemented. And the procedures must ensure that action is taken to identify and correct the problem with the implementation of preventive control, that all affected food is evaluated for food safety, and that all affected food does not enter commerce if the food may be adulterated or misbranded, which you may refer to SCAR or CAMP dashboard. Next is verification and validation. Verification procedures should be routine and ongoing to prove that the food safety plan is executed as intended. Monitoring must be verified, as must decisions about corrective actions. Validation should be based on sound scientific knowledge from publications, scientific literature, or other resources, and must be performed or overseen by the PCQI. The audit should be performed annually to compare the actual practices and procedures of the system, which you may refer to audit program. Calibration should be documented, and the records should be available for review during verification, which you may refer to calibration program and to calibration plan. Reanalysis should be conducted once every 3 years to update the food safety plan's preventive control, which you may refer to reanalysis procedure. And critical control point in storage temperature should be documented. For freezer storage, the room shall be maintained at a temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Adequate air circulation is desirable. For chiller storage, all products shall be kept under refrigeration at the temperatures of 40°F or lower after packaging and until ready for distribution or shipment. And 10th, frequency. Food safety plan review should be conducted annually or as often as necessary to reflect changes, which may refer to food safety plan review. And food safety meeting minutes and management review SQF system review should be reviewed monthly, which may refer to food safety meeting minutes and to management review SQF system review. Then 5th is responsibility. The responsibility of the person is indicated. It covers what to perform to comply with the procedure or the policy. For the senior site management, lead and support the establishment, documentation and communication to all relevant staff of the food safety plan. Primary and substitute SQF practitioner is responsible in overseeing the development, implementation, review, and maintenance of the food safety plan. Next is the responsibility of the food safety team leader or the PCQI. The food safety team leader manages the organization's food safety management system, overseeing food safety processes, audits, corrective actions and recalls, and keeping the organization informed of food safety issues, which may refer to job description. And the responsibility of the food safety member. Food safety team members will assist the food safety team leader with the day-to-day requirements of the food safety department. The member will work mainly in the production room verifying quality control, monitoring that food safety procedures and documentations are being followed, problem solving as relates to food safety issues, and assisting with compliance of HACCP, GMP, and SQF, which you may refer to job description. Now let's proceed to the 6th component of the program, which is corrective action. The corrective action is the process of taking appropriate steps to eliminate causes of nonconformities or other undesirable situations. If hazards are introduced into the process or products, train the key personnel involved in the implementation of the program. Review the hazard analysis to verify that all potential hazards are identified and control measures are in place. Revalidate the critical limits, and review the procedures for effectiveness and revise if needed. When changes occur in the process or new products are introduced, update and revalidate the HACCP or food safety plan to reflect the changes. The 7th component of the program is Review Quality Annual. The review section serves as guidelines for conducting the annual or periodic review. The HACCP team is in place, includes the expertise of the subject process, and members are trained in HACCP principles. The HACCP team has been fully involved in the development and review of the HACCP system. The product and process scope of the HACCP plan is defined. Product descriptions are available and include relevant safety information. The intended use of the product is clearly defined. A process flow diagram has been developed and includes all process steps, inputs, and outputs. It has been confirmed by the HACCP team. Potential hazards have been identified for all process steps and a hazard analysis conducted using a consistent and valid method. Control measures are in place for all identified hazards, and procedures or work instructions are effectively implemented. CCPs are correctly identified using a valid methodology. Critical limits are in place for every CCP and are validated to ensure consistent product safety. All critical limits are monitored and test procedures, responsibilities, and frequency fully documented and implemented. Corrective actions are documented, are unambiguous, and determine the disposition of product and action required to prevent recurrence. The corrective action procedure has been followed when monitoring shows deviation from critical limits. Staff with responsibility for monitoring, validation, verification of critical limits, or any other food safety control measures are aware of their responsibility, trained, and are carrying out their functions correctly. And the SQF practitioner ensures that the food safety plan is effectively developed, implemented, maintained, and verified. Next is reference documents. The reference documents are the set of documents used to implement and monitor a program, policy, or procedure. It includes the food safety plan, the food safety training, training schedule, training records, job description, allergen label, the batch product record form, cleaning and sanitation program, cleaning, sanitation, and verification of equipment register records, followed by the premises and equipment maintenance program, the inspection and equipment maintenance form, certification of analysis, product specification, personnel qualification job descriptions program, personnel qualification job descriptions lessons, the raw materials, ingredients, and packaging material specification validation program, raw material receiving protocol program, approved supplier program, verification activities program, verification, validation, and effectiveness form, the corrective and preventive action program, followed by calibration program, calibration analysis, process flow program, the detection of foreign objects, food safety plan review, reanalysis procedure, food safety meeting minutes, management review SQF system review, management review program, audit program, SCAR, and product recall program. Next to reference documents is references. The reference section is composed of guides utilized to implement the program. Examples are the certification guide, regulations, and other widely accepted scientific journals, research, and the like. It must comply with the standard format citation, which can be based on either MLA, APA, or Chicago style, and update the access date. Lastly, history. The history section is where we can update the program if there are any changes or revisions made in the document. If there is a revision, enter the revision number, followed by the revision date, the description of the change made, the name of the author or the originator, and the title or department of the author or the originator. Thank you for participating in this document review. Content presented are for training purposes only and are based on the interpretation of standards and best practices and must be customized for your intended use. To fully customize your programs, policies, procedures, forms for records, and lessons for training, you may contact Interlink IQ or Consultier Inc. at services@interlinkiq.com or simply call 202-982-3002. For free access, visit interlinkiq.com.